carer calls police concerned about a pensioner.
It appears that the lady is unresponsive. They were concerned that the circumstances weren't quite right.
The woman's dog is found alone and frightened.
The place has been ransacked. So who's done that?
Sometimes things are not obvious to see at face value.
How am I supposed to pay you?
There was a murderer on the loose in a very quiet village where everybody knew each other.
How can the crime scene tell us the story as to what has happened?
Someone in the caravan!
We need to find out who they are. We need to catch that killer at that crime scene.
Please, open the door!
When I arrived, there were 3 police forensic vans. There was one on the side street here, one just off the pavement here, and then one on the driveway there. So it's obvious that there's a very serious incident that had happened in the street.
In the quiet village of Fleckney, a large police presence outside the pensioner's home quickly attracts attention.
The police weren't releasing any information initially. I came out here and spoke to people in the street. People were frightened and scared. There was no confirmation of the victim, but people obviously knew who the neighbour was.
The resident is 72-year-old Jane Hings.
We went out there to chat to the residents and the locals, and we got the picture that she was a popular figure who lived on her own with her beloved greyhound dog, Paddy. She had had a fall recently, and this meant that people in the village helped walk the dog, Paddy, when it was obviously too much for her.
I was due to go over about 10 o'clock on the Sunday, just for a chat and to pick Paddy up. And I was running late, as always, and she hadn't called me. And I thought that was really weird, so I tried calling her on the way. Didn't answer, just went straight to answer phone. Kept trying her, nothing. So just carried on over, literally pulled into like the top end of her close and just saw loads of police cars and forensics. There was a lady just standing there with Paddy on a lead. That kind of told me all I needed to know. One of the villagers that I knew had come up to me and was like, oh, you know, it's probably just like natural and all that. And I was just like, it's not, I know it's not. The amount of police that were there was quite intimidating. You don't get forensics there for just the natural cause.
Inside the bungalow, CSIs are looking for answers. The carers have formally identified the woman as Jane, but it's not yet clear how she died.
It's very difficult to determine the cause of death because there's no obvious signs. No traumatic injuries are obvious. There's no bruising around her neck that you would associate with strangulation. She doesn't have any head injuries. You have to keep an open mind. Until we know definitively, we work with a worst-case scenario.
We don't know the cause of death. That means that the search of the crime scene is very open. We're not really sure what we're looking for within that crime scene.
A pathologist is called to the scene. There is evidence of a serious sexual assault.
The body itself can be treated as a crime scene. There was blood around the nose. There were grazes on her cheek. There were bruises on her arms, which indicated grip marks. These injuries suggest that there was a struggle and the victim was pinned down or held down. If someone is held down, you know, the grip marks will be very distinct, and it would mean the person had been held down for quite some time.
This is a vulnerable lady. There were defence injuries on her hands and her arms. This tended to suggest that she may have put up a struggle.
That is a major crime scene.
Jane also appears to have been burgled. Her phone, handbag, and some jewellery are missing.
The necklace, a crucifix, it's been ripped off violently because it's got bruising on her neck. It is a violent and heartless attack. Who's done this?
Homicide detectives, one of the first things they will do will be trying to, work out what is the connection between the victim and the potential suspect pool. If it's a robbery homicide, they might think that that could actually be a stranger, somebody who opportunistically broke into a property. So who do they know in the local community who might be committing robberies? Similarly, who are their known sexual predators?
What's their MO? Has one of the suspects got a preference for attacking elderly women and sexually assaulting them?
Officers go door to door. Jane's neighbours didn't see or hear anything suspicious. The team are relying on forensics to lead them to her attacker.
There's some evidence that has to be collected quickly so that you can be able to get the most reliable results. There could be DNA or some trace elements which could have been left on the body. It's very easy for this to get lost or to get contaminated as the body is being transferred, and yet it could be the most crucial evidence.
When the body's been moved from the bed, there is a small silver tongue bar found towards the lower part of her body. It was not hers. She didn't have any piercings. If it's not the victim's, it's a foreign item within that crime scene.
It indicates that someone's been really close and intimate with that victim before they've died. This may well be the offenders.
We're not sure whether the sexual assault in the first instance, was that the primary motivation, or was it really the robbery and then he decided to enact a sexual attack after that? In any event, that combination is fairly unusual. It's possible that he saw her as a vulnerable person that he could control.
The tongue bar is fast-tracked for DNA testing, as CSIs look at how Jane's attacker got in.
Is it one offender? Is it more than one offender? Have they come in through the door? Have they climbed in through a window? Is there any damage? Has anything been dropped within that scene or left that may link back to an offender?
CSIs find no signs of forced entry.
Then you ask yourself the question, did the victim know the suspect?
As Jane's remains are taken from the scene, community fears intensify.
What scared the community was the fact that who would do such a thing? Jane was a 72-year-old woman who wouldn't harm a fly. If they were capable of doing this, what else were they capable of doing? The police are under an immense amount of pressure.
The police would have been concerned that this was, a dangerous offender that might go on to commit further similar attacks. Speed was of the essence in apprehending him.
Police have launched a murder inquiry after an elderly woman was found dead at her home in Fleckney. Detectives say there were signs of a disturbance in the property and forensic searches are continuing there.
Police in Leicestershire are investigating the suspicious death of a pensioner. 72-year-old Jane Hings appears to have been sexually assaulted in her bed. After finding no signs of a break-in, police suspect she knew her attacker.
In most cases, women are killed by their intimate partner, or their former or current partner or lover. In just 7% of cases, the victim is a stranger to the offender.
The team's strongest lead so far is a tongue bar recovered from the scene they suspect belongs to Jane's attacker.
We drip water onto the end of the swab. It's important to work out the best place to get the DNA. The DNA is going to be all over this tongue bar, so I'm going to hold it right at the tip with some freshly cleaned gloves, and then I'm going to take some swabs from all around this tongue bar and all of the surfaces around it.
As they wait for the results, CSIs continue to search for evidence at the scene, while detectives take a closer look at who was in Jane's life.
When we look at the victim, so we create victimologies. So what are our habits, what's associations with other people?
Jane's friends and neighbours tell the police she was a private person.
She had no close family relatives. She lived on her own. Her life was her dog. She loved her dog.
She rescued Paddy from a rescue centre. He was very spoiled. I worked for a doggy daycare company, and because she'd fell over recently and she was struggling to walk Paddy, I was the one that picked him up and dropped him off every night. That led then into, can you just come in and do this? So I helped her out in other ways like that.
A divorcee, Jane had lived in the Netherlands before moving back to Fleckney to care for her parents during their final years.
Jane was a lovely, caring lady, took pride in her appearance, always had her hair done. She had some close friends that would take her to the hairdressers and take her shopping. literally every week and do those things for her. And then she'd got her other friends that were a bit further away that like would go to church with her or visit her in hospital or go around and have fish and chips with her. I think she was happy.
She was a well-loved character in the village, and she gave money to charity even though she didn't have a lot of money to spend on herself.
Detectives discover that Jane was hospitalised 3 months ago after falling and breaking her ribs.
She's very limited in mobility. It may well be a targeted approach based upon her vulnerability. So now we have to focus on that.
After she'd come out of hospital after the fall, she needed a lot more help with things around the house and even just your little jobs like that she couldn't do. She got loads of walking aids and, you know, just things like that. So even like the making a cup of tea was a bit of hard work for her. So she probably did trust people a bit more to help her because she had no choice.
Had the suspect previously worked or did some work around the house? Or is there someone who lives nearby that potentially do this kind of crime? Because most burglars are local.
Fleckney is about 9 miles south of Leicester. It's a very tight community. It's the place where everybody knows each other, but in a nice way. It has a primary school, it has a shop, a couple of pubs, a village hall, which is often quite full of people with different community groups meeting. Part of the reason that everybody was so shocked was that this sort of thing just does not happen there.
We look at other intelligence around the community that we can utilise, especially through the Safer Neighbourhoods teams, because they have the finger on the pulse. When they're in the local communities, they know exactly what's going on, who potentially could have done this.
As well as finding who attacked Jane, the team still needs to determine how she died. As they await the post-mortem results, CSIs look for clues in Jane's bedroom.
Not being able to find a cause of death can be quite frustrating. Has someone actually murdered that person? If we can determine the cause of death, it's then possible for us to then either find a weapon or try and link an offender to the crime.
The team investigating thought that she was actually murdered on the bed itself. Everything indicated that everything happened there.
The deceased was found covered with a duvet. Her face was covered. It's really important to then work out, has this contributed to her death? Has the victim been smothered either with a duvet or with a pillow? It's really important for the bedclothes and the pillows to be examined and recovered for any potential trace evidence on them.
Further examination of Jane's bed leads the team to believe Jane's attacker is careless.
There was a baseball cap that was found behind the headboard of the bed. This lady isn't the type of lady that will wear baseball caps, so why is there a baseball cap? Maybe it's been dropped by a relative, maybe it's been there for a considerable period of time, but also maybe that could have belonged to the offender. This then becomes quite a significant find. Potentially, the victim has been sexually assaulted on the bed and the baseball cap has been either thrown or fallen off behind the headboard. It's a really good source of DNA that would be sent to the lab for urgent DNA examination.
You can't say when it's been placed there or however long it's been in that property, but what you can say is who's brought it in there or who hasn't brought it in there.
It had distinctive markings on it and it was an unusual colour. Has anyone been seen in the area on CCTV wearing this baseball cap? If so, who was that person?
None of Jane's friends or helpers recognised the cap. It's sent for DNA testing.
I'm just checking to see if there's any blood or any hairs within the baseball cap. Most hairs that you find inside a baseball cap are actually broken hairs, so they don't normally contain a root. It's the actual root where the DNA is mainly held. You can get DNA from hair shafts, but it's significantly reduced and a lot more difficult. If there's no hairs, the best place you've got to look for DNA now is around the sweatband. The best way to examine this is to use mini tapes, and instead of swabbing, the sticky surface actually just takes off the DNA. Forensic scientists would then extract the DNA from the sticky side of that tape.
Given the seriousness of the offence and given that the suspect was at large, the police were having to make some very important decisions early on. We call these fast-track decisions. The decision to fast-track this evidence was a really crucial one.
Just 36 hours after Jane was found, forensic scientists have a result. The tongue bar and baseball cap have returned the same male DNA profile. It's uploaded on the database, and there's a match. To 25-year-old Craig Keogh.
Kehoe had previous convictions for theft and burglary, and among those, he had burgled the sports centre in Fleckney village, but also he had burgled his own parents' house.
The suspect is careless and reckless, total disregard for any sort of respect for anyone at all.
Some young men start to value violence as a way of resolving their difficulties and, in fact, sometimes their insecurities. There's a lot of really good research now that's looking at that connection, and they're suggesting that the kind of this very fragile male psyche or ego that's been damaged is part of the explanation, but that you've got to then have been socialised to value violence.
Craig Kehoe is found to have had a difficult upbringing and is a known drug user. He's currently unemployed and has no fixed address.
The police knew he was a local man and had lived in the village, but they weren't sure where he was at the moment, but they knew that they had to arrest him as soon as they could.
From a forensic perspective, the sooner we can arrest somebody and take some samples from them, the more chance we have of recovering evidence on them or in their property.
We need to get hold of him at the earliest opportunity before he disappears.
He's located to a caravan just 2 streets away from Jane's home.
Someone in the caravan! Please! Open the door! Someone with a dark hair in there. Please open the door!
It's almost quite exciting from a crime scene manager's point of view to know that the police are out trying to find somebody on the evidence that you found in that scene.
Right, don't move, mate. What's your name? Craig, stay there. Come out. Craig. Right, hands behind the back.
It's very calm. There's no kicking and fussing.
Right, at this moment in time, I'm resting.
617. I've got Craig.
There's no fight. He's very calm, especially when he's told about he's been arrested for murder.
You don't have to say anything. Basically, don't mention one question. Something which relates to rely on the court. Anything you do, so maybe giving evidence. Do you understand everything I said to you? Yeah. Time rest, 12:36 hours.
It's interesting to see his reaction, or lack of reaction. He's very nonchalant about it, just a very, very odd behaviour.
He certainly doesn't appear to be alarmed or distressed or disturbed. Perhaps he even felt that his arrest was inevitable.
Detectives are questioning a 25-year-old man on suspicion of murder. He was arrested at an address in the village just before 1 this afternoon. The man was taken to an unnamed police station in Leicestershire.
Craig Kehoe is interviewed under caution.
Have you got any piercings?
Got my ear pierced.
Your ear pierced? Okay. Anywhere else?
Yeah, on tongue pierced.
Your tongue?
Police ask if he knew Jane.
I was walking through the village and I saw this lady and our shopping bag broke and I helped her and then I carried it to the house with her.
Kehoe did walk her dog on a couple of occasions. This is how he became introduced to Jane Hings. He would realise the situation that she was in, that she was a 72-year-old woman that lived on her own.
It could be someone being kind, but supported by everything else, the tongue stud, the hat, the previous history of burglary, it's all red flags. So he's got knowledge of her habits, knowledge of her vulnerabilities, and knowledge of the layout of the property. So he would know where her jewellery's kept, what jewellery she has, if there's any cash in any locations.
When was the last time you saw her then?
The last time I saw her was Sunday night.
Okay. What time would that have been?
I got there for about 10:30.
You got there at 10:30?
Yeah.
During the interview, he admits being inside the property on the night of the murder. Now you can focus your priorities, you can focus your resources on the suspect. You know the forensics relate to him from the tongue stud. What's the intelligence profile? What do we know about him?
So if we take from 10:30 at night then through to when you left at 11.
Yeah.
Tell me exactly in detail what happened.
Well, we were watching a little film on the TV, and then she asked me to have sex with her again.
Yeah, very shocked. All he's doing is creating a narrative for himself. He's creating a storyline for himself, one that he'd think he could believe himself, and then hopefully someone else will believe him. That's calculated.
Just tell me exactly what she said to you about having sex.
She just said, Craig, will you have sex with me? But the first time it started off, It was about a month ago when I was in the house, and she just came into the front room naked, and she was like, "Hey, come and do it with me and I'll pay you."
How much did she pay you?
She paid me £75.
£200.
And it happened a month ago, the first time. And then she asked me to come back a month later. And then it happened again.
I think it's pushed it so far that it's happened several times now. If it was just a one-off, then they won't believe me. But if it happened several times, yeah, they might believe me.
Police are convinced that this offender has committed this crime, but it still needs to be proved beyond reasonable doubt so that it can stand up in court, so a jury can understand what's happened, particularly if they don't have an exact cause of death. In forensic terms, it's quite difficult for us to prove or disprove what's happened because he's admitted being in the house and that he'd had consensual sex with the victim. He's kind of negated the fact that we might find things there.
The investigation team have got to work fast because they need to reassure the community that they've got the right person. So what's their story? And then you tear their story apart.
Tell me exactly in detail what happened.
Well, we were watching the little film on TV, and then she asked me to have sex with her again.
After being arrested on suspicion of raping and murdering pensioner Jane Hings, 25-year-old Craig Keogh has made a shocking admission.
She's like, "I'll pay you more this time." I was like, "Okay." I didn't think anything of it. And that was it, really. And she said she felt sick, and then I left her.
He claims Jane has been paying him for sex, but insists he didn't kill her.
One of the main reasons why suspects will do that is because they might know that their DNA will be found. So by saying, well, yes, of course I was there, then they're not implicating themselves in the crime and they're actually providing themselves with a good reason for being there.
There is a one excuse there now. You could add an element of doubt there.
With Jane's cause of death unknown, police don't yet have grounds to charge Keogh with her murder.
The perfect world is you have a motive and you have a cause of death. There is no perfect world. So you go in with the information you have and you work with that. As an SIO, you would look at everything. If he's saying he's had some sort of sexual relationship, okay, where's the evidence to support that?
Hours after arresting Keogh, the team receives the initial results of the post-mortem.
There can be some bruising that can be associated with consensual sex, but in sexual assault, there would be significant bruising and damage that will be found.
The pathologist finds Jane's injuries make consensual sex implausible, though they can't be definitive. The cause of death is still unknown.
We check if is there any physical evidence that points towards any illness, for example, or any diseases that the victim could have had, which could have led them to die. Also, any signs of poisoning as well. And then if that is not there, then the pathologist then needs to look for evidence of smothering.
The pathologist is able to determine that Jane died between 1:20 and 2:30 a.m. on Sunday morning.
When was the last time you saw her then?
The last time I saw her was Sunday night.
Okay. What time would that have been?
I got there for about 10:30.
Keogh claims to have stayed at Jane's for half an hour, leaving at 11 p.m.
It's an ever-evolving scene. There may be other evidence that may be able to narrow down the timescales, in which case you might be able to narrow down when that DNA's been placed there. The suspect said that he'd gone there to watch a movie. Is there something to watch a movie on? Is there a digibox, or is there a video recorder or a DVD player or something? Is there evidence that there is a movie that's been played? If so, does that fit with his story?
Jane's digibox is recovered. There's no record of a film being watched on the night she died.
It's not definitive. However, it's another piece. It's circumstantial evidence, And what you're doing is adding that piece to everything else that's going on, and you bring this circumstantial evidence together. We need to identify his movements beforehand. Where had he been? So do we have any CCTV footage of him? Did he use his card anywhere?
Following the financial trail, Craig Keogh is located in a pub on Saturday night between 9 and closing time, just 5 miles away from Jane's home.
Keogh was caught on CCTV at a pub in Oadby at the time that he suggested that he was watching a film at Jane's house.
Detectives immediately notice Keogh's distinctive baseball cap.
Now, that is significant. It's the same cap that was discovered and recovered from Jane's house. So he's gone from the pub to the crime scene. The CCTV shows he was very drunk. May have taken other things.
He seemed to be acting in a very strange manner, acting erratically. He had been trying to sell people cocaine, and I think he even tried to sell a couple of the pub managers some of the cocaine as well.
The connection between drugs and violent offending is complex. It's never just the drug has caused it, obviously, because there's lots of people taking all sorts of drugs all the time and don't commit crimes, but it is implicated in some offences, and certainly cocaine is one of the drugs where there's the most robust evidence that there can be a connection in some instances, but it's complicated. There's been some great research done in the United States which shows that if you weren't a violent offender before you started taking cocaine, that you're not likely to suddenly become a violent offender, but that if you've got some violent history prior, that the ingestion of cocaine can kind of escalate your involvement in violent crimes subsequently.
Witnesses tell police Keogh became increasingly aggressive and was overheard loudly complaining.
He's indicated that the night was boring. He wanted something else to do. He apparently had plans with a couple of girls that he was going to go out with. He may have thought that he was going to have some sort of sexual encounter with them, but that didn't happen. After
leaving the pub, Keogh is seen vandalising cars and gardens, kicking a wall and throwing himself into a bush. At 1:10 a.m, CCTV captures him being dropped off home alone.
The suspect got a cab back to his caravan. Instead of going home, decided to walk away and walk towards Jane's house.
It was in the middle of the night. That's her last moments. And the fear is heartbreaking. That particular night, we just had a really long conversation. It must have been about an hour on the phone, telling me more about her life and everything. She was telling me where she worked abroad and things like that, and she was a nanny. So, yeah, it was just, we had a really nice conversation that night. But mainly it talked about Paddy. She was like, if anything happens to me, we have Paddy. And I was like, of course I'll have Paddy, but you're not going anywhere. You know, yeah, you've had a fall, you're all right, but you're getting better. But then it just gets taken away.
During that conversation and that call, at no point did she mention the suspect coming round.
The next CCTV captures Keogh coming home, only to turn round and head back towards Jane's home. Police believe Keogh may have returned to rape Jane for a second time.
That really massively shocked me. Like, I can't, what goes through someone's head to do that? It's control, isn't it? That's what it is, power.
It's unusual the suspect returned after his initial assault to carry out that kind of attack on a female victim who is clearly more vulnerable. Does say something about his mindset, perhaps because they haven't got control in other aspects of their lives.
The team is even more determined to get justice for Jane. After ruling out all other possibilities, the pathologist advises there is only one possible explanation for how she died.
They had a very high index of suspicion, which pointed towards the victim being smothered. It takes about 4 minutes of lack of oxygen to cause lethal brain damage. It's disturbing and quite shocking.
Jane's injuries indicate she was suffocated with a soft object, leaving no apparent marks, making it impossible for the pathologist to be sure. The team suspect she was killed with her duvet or pillow.
Part of the role as a crime scene manager is to put yourself in the mindset of a killer. If you're going to kill somebody or smother somebody a pillow, how would you hold the pillow? Where would you put your hands? They're going to leave DNA as well as potential fingerprints. Forensic scientists can potentially interpret that those areas have been used to hold a pillowcase really tightly, potentially over someone's face.
But to prove their theory, first, the team needs to find a way to recover any trace evidence from Jane's bed linen.
Fabrics are virtually impossible to get fingerprints on using traditional methods. Because of the makeup of the fabric and the fact that it's kind of absorbent, it's impossible to develop ridge detail.
24 hours into his detention, the team are running out of time to question Keogh.
The custody clock is always ticking. You have got a ticking time bomb to a certain extent. It's a lot of pressure.
I think there's always a potential with somebody that's committed that kind of a violent offence against an acquaintance that they could go on to do it again.
The team apply for an extension.
You've got to work out what evidence do you have. You can't get everything. You can't get everything. What can you get in order to bring a charge? You've got to get what evidence you can quickly so that you can work on the rest of the forensics and other court inquiries in slower time.
Detectives have been given more time to continue questioning a man on suspicion of murder. The superintendent's granted permission for him to continue to remain in custody for a further 12 hours. Further forensic examinations, meanwhile, have been taking place.
With just 12 hours to charge Keogh, the team focuses on linking him to the burglary and Jane's stolen belongings. After being seen heading towards Jane's house in the early hours of Sunday, he's captured again later that morning. At 9:30 a.m., he leaves home with a bin bag.
It's really important for us to try and ascertain what might be in that bin bag. Where was he taking the bin bag?
The team appeals to the community to check their gardens for any suspicious items.
You want to know where is her jewellery. Also, her phone is missing as well. So where is her phone?
The incident room receives a tip-off.
Information is brought to the police's attention that a mobile phone has been dumped in a nearby drain. It's really important to recover this phone as quickly as possible because if it's in a drain, it's probably likely to get wet and can be covered in quite a lot of gunk and mess. So the chances of getting DNA and fingerprints on that is dramatically reduced. But there still may be information that's obtainable from the SIM card. Any photographs or text messages or phone calls are still recorded on that SIM card.
The phone is fast-tracked for testing and confirmed as belonging to Jane. But to link Keogh to the crime scene, the team still needs to locate Jane's stolen jewellery, valued at over £1,000.
Where would they go to dispose of the jewellery? They're not going to dump it, because the whole point of doing a burglary is to take property and sell it. So we target the pawn shops, speak to them, put photographs of the types of jewellery out there, and work in partnership with them to identify who's brought that jewellery in.
Keogh is traced to Leicester, where he buys a new tongue bar before calling in at a pawnbroker. Officers recover jewellery Keogh pawned for £105. It matches the description of Jane's stolen jewellery.
You're trying to potentially link it back to the victim. You need to think about how you're going to swab it for victim's DNA, so the person that used to wear the crucifix. The area that's important to swab on this, it will be around the chain area because that's where it's going to be rubbing against somebody's neck, which is actually quite difficult to do because it's a really intricate chain.
Swabs from the crucifix return a 1 in 1 billion match to Craig Keogh.
Why would a 25-year-old want to do that to a 72-year-old woman? How can you do that? It's just wrong.
After pawning Jane's jewellery, Keogh is traced to a bar where he buys his friends drinks and is seen joking around.
What it tells us about him, he just doesn't care. He just doesn't care about his victims, doesn't care about his actions. He doesn't care about the consequences of what he's done. He's just a callous killer.
The Crown Prosecution Service authorised police to charge Keogh with burglary, Jane's rape and murder. With smothering found to be the most likely cause of death, but not definitive, the team still has work to do.
What you don't want is for him to turn around in some sort of defence during a trial and say, actually, she died of natural causes. And so we have to prove that actually she was unlawfully killed. There's always that fear the jury will believe him.
The team are convinced that Jane's pillows hold the answer to how she died. But with traditional forensic methods ineffective, they need to find a way to get to the evidence.
It's so key to basically maximise what resources you have, but you have to be careful because you don't have a finite number. So you have to be smart the way you apply your resources. With new technology, not just within the UK, but overseas, we've gone leaps and bounds to the days when I first looked at these kind of murders to what we can do now.
Sometimes a crime scene manager has to think outside the box a little bit. There is a method. It's a non-destructive technique, so DNA can still be recovered. The killer in this case grossly underestimated the power of forensic science.
Police investigating the death of pensioner Jane Hings have charged Craig Keogh with her rape and murder. DNA has linked Keogh to the crime scene, but as the trial approaches, they still need to prove their theory that he smothered Jane. Convinced one of her pillows is the murder weapon, the team has identified an innovative forensic technique that could finally reveal vital evidence.
Vacuum metal deposition is one of the few techniques that can actually develop finger marks on fabrics. VMD technology is a coating process. It's quite often used in the commercial world for something as simple as coating greetings cards or the baubles of a Christmas decoration. We're heating up metals, and those metals are evaporating and then depositing on the residues that we leave from our fingerprints on the surface of the evidence.
Using VMD develops 15% more fingerprints than any other method available. Evidence is placed in a vacuum chamber, and tiny amounts of metals such as gold and zinc are heated and vaporize. The vape attaches to evidence, revealing where it's been handled in a reversed image.
Everybody leaves a trace on items that they've handled or touched, and these are made up of different things. So they are amino acids, fats or fat lipids, and water. We're not just looking for finger marks. We're just looking for the presence of where somebody's touched an item. And that's important when you're extracting or swabbing for DNA.
Jane's pillowcases are sent to a team of experts.
So we're simulating the attack. We're going to process this pillowcase in the VMD to identify the areas of touch. VMD is unique in the way that it can be used on all types of evidence, so whether it be paper, fabrics, metals. So when we're talking about metals, knife crime is a big problem. So getting fingerprints off of knives, even when they've been washed, and things like fired ammunition. Your fingerprints are still there.
But until now, no one has attempted to use VMD to identify the presence of a victim and a perpetrator on a pillowcase used in a smothering.
Sometimes you have to try things that you've never tried before, and kind of try something like that is really revolutionary. We've explored and exhausted every other technique. Let's try this and see if it works.
We've reached the vacuum level required. Now what we're going to do is to start the heating of the gold. What's happening is that the gold gets absorbed into those biological residues, so the sweat that we've left behind.
Experts use gold as it readily sticks to fats and residues left behind by fingerprints. The results from Jane's pillowcases are chilling.
There are visible fingerprints and visible areas of rich detail on the edge of this pillowcase.
What we're seeing is the grab impressions of where the hands were placed to place the pillow over the person's face.
In the centre, there's also a saliva mark, potentially from our victim's face.
That was not a natural occurring event.
With the fingerprints now revealed, the pillowcase is sent for targeted DNA testing.
The beauty of VMD has no detrimental effect on the presence of DNA on the surface.
Using the chemical enhancement identifies particular areas of importance instead of having to examine the whole pillowcase. So the areas that could be DNA swabbed would be these areas on both sides where it's been grabbed, and then also the area in the centre where it's been placed over someone's nose and mouth. You can get sweat from the nose area and then obviously saliva from the mouth. The DNA profile of the saliva area came back as the victim. The DNA profile towards the edge of the pillow where it looked like it had been grabbed came back as the suspect. This is the murder weapon.
I went to the trial every day. I wanted someone to represent her and be there for her. Obviously, her friends are older and didn't want to go through that and endure that. And it was hard, like that very first day when he walked in, like being that close to him, because you automatically think they're monsters, like they're gonna look like a monster, but he just looked like a young kid. But then you think about what he's done.
It was horrific for them to sit through and listen to what Keogh had subjected Jane to, through what must have been a terrifying ordeal for her.
Despite the evidence recovered from Jane's pillowcase, Keogh pleads not guilty.
This really challenged me for a bit. Why? Like, with all the amount of evidence they've got on him, firstly, how can he plead not guilty? And then to just sit there and, like, he not acknowledge what he's done or even show remorse for it or any emotion. The only time was when he sort of cried and spoke to his mum. That was it.
Given that there's such compelling evidence against him, it does seem remarkable that he's sticking to the story that it wasn't him. He's trying to get away with a serious violent crime. And some offenders will never admit it. You know, they will never say they did it, sometimes because they just don't want their families to know.
Maybe in his mind, the jury will believe him because he's pushed enough doubts in there. The jury can see that, though. The jury can see, and they can see through people lying.
The offender in this case admitted he was at the scene, but forensically, we're able to use incredible techniques to prove exactly what's happened.
The jury retires. It takes only 5 hours for them to return their verdict.
I was told not to show any emotion, which is really hard. Keogh was led into the dark and was just deadpan.
A man's been jailed for life for raping and murdering pensioner Jane Hings. Sentencing him, Mr. Justice Jeremy Baker told Keogh his actions after the crime were callous in the extreme and he'd shown no remorse.
Keogh is sentenced to a minimum of 32 years for Jane's murder and 2 counts of rape.
I've been a journalist for more than 30 years and I have attended lots of murder trials and been to murder scenes, and this one does stick out in my mind. It's such a shocking and brutal murder committed against a vulnerable and defenceless 72-year-old woman in the sanctity of her own house where she thought she would be safe.
We won't really know the truth behind the motive, but a judge believed that he committed the murder in order to hide and cover up the burglary and the rape.
It often revolves around control. There's a body of research that says actually there's things in society, in the very fabric of society, that kind of allow men's negative perceptions of females to be perpetuated. Men that commit these serious sexual acts of violence, they obviously take this to the extreme, but it almost kind of reinforces their views that men are powerful and in control and that women should be in some way subordinate.
Start off with it was hard because my phone was quiet. She'd call me probably 10, 20 times a day, and someone took that away for nothing.
As promised to Jane, Michelle looked after her beloved Paddy.
When Paddy came to live with us, the first few weeks he was very nervy, loud noises, big bangs. Who only knows what he experienced that night. But eventually he became one of my pack and, yeah, lived out the rest of his life.
Jane was beloved by her friends and neighbours. Her death was a huge loss. The community really came together. They set up an online appeal to raise money to pay for Jane's funeral. And they raised the money within days. He gave her a really good send-off where everybody shared memories of Jane and her dog, Paddy.
The sea of flowers that were left in front of a house, it was heartwarming because you think nowadays that we don't know our neighbours, we don't care about people, but actually people do care.